Salutations, stranded pilots. Automatic here for Automatic Games. Thanks for joining me for this third installment of Friends in High Places. Just part of my overall Battlefield 1 series. Where we last left off, Blackburn and his friend Wilson were shot down over German territory. That's where we'll pick up.
The bird was busted. She buried her nose in no man's land a half-mile due west of where I went down. Wilson, the poor sap, didn't make it out. But that was his bad luck. I had more pressing problems.
Now, Blackburn's got to get out of German-occupied territory, across no man's land, and connect with British troops, which is no small feat. And full disclosure, this isn't the first time I've played this level, so I know where some of the German sentries are. Now, since we're in the Western Front, I'm going to seize upon this opportunity, and while this story unfolds for us, I'm going to share with you a family story. My family has a long-standing history of military service, dating all the way back to the United States Civil War. My father served three tours in Vietnam, stationed at Phu Bai, just south of the North Vietnamese border, dangerously close. His name was William Bellhorn. He was named after his grandfather's brother. That would be my great-grandfather's brother. The reason being is because William the Elder lived quite a remarkable life, both in the service and outside. Now, growing up, I knew some things about him. I knew that he had signed up, much like his brother John, for the 4th Ohio Regiment. Later, it was re-identified as the 166th Regiment. His first deployment was in Mexico. The 166th accompanied the Fighting 42nd, the Rainbow Division under John Pershing, as they went into Mexico to chase down a criminal and rebel by the name of Pancho Villa. It was during this time that William distinguished himself. He went from non-enlisted to lieutenant. In fact, he outranked Patton for a brief period of time. Now, after the chase for Pancho Villa, and what's so notable about that is many consider that to be one of the closing chapters of the Wild West. But anyway, I digress. After the chase for Pancho Villa, the Rainbow Division was redeployed to France, for we had entered the Great War. Their first stop was the tomb of Lafayette, to pay respects and show gratitude to the general that had dedicated part of his life to the American cause in our own revolution against the British. After that, there were a few layovers, and then they ended up in the vicinity of Chateau Thierry. Now, as far as stories about William went, I knew what I had just told you. I also knew that his name appeared on a casualty list as slightly wounded. I knew, too, that he had ultimately become company commander, although while he was a lieutenant, he was second in command of L Company. Otherwise, my father was fortunate enough to have a small booklet that was thrown together by another member of L Company, and it mentioned William Bellhorn's name a couple times, once in a normal roster at the front of the book, but then his name came up in a story which I'll happily share with you now. A soldier from L Company, a runner, was captured by the Germans. He was interrogated, a non-brutal interrogation, and afterwards an English-speaking German said, "We're going to escort you back. A couple soldiers will escort you so far, and then at some point we're going to cut you loose, and you're free to go. However, you stand a chance of being shot by our troops once we release you. And moreover, it is altogether likely you could be shot by your own troops while trying to find your way back to them. Well, they did as he had said. They took him a little ways, and then they set him free. And then he had a terrifying time. Hours went by as he was trying to work his way back to the American lines. To his great fortune, he came across a scout, a man whose first name escapes me, but he was from F Company, and his last name was Stoneburner. He was Native American, and he very adeptly guided this formerly captive soldier back to L Company. And that's where William's name came up. The soldier said that once he reached L Company, he shared his story with the officers. And Lieutenant Bellhorn was awestruck, dumbfounded by the story, really entertained by the fact that an Indian scout had guided this fortunate soldier back to his company. And really, that's the only story that I had. It wasn't action-packed, but I thought it was kind of neat to see his name mentioned. Now, as I got older, I decided to look him up. You know, the internet came to be, and I figured I'd try to look up William Bellhorn, find out, maybe some things that my dad missed. And my dad probably knew more than he told me, but he adored his namesake. And, I mean, he'd pick at this guy's brain for stories. So, I don't know what stories my dad might have taken to his grave, but I was fortunate enough to come across some. I came across a book called Ohio and the Rainbow, and it's a regimental history of the 166th. And not only was William Bellhorn mentioned in the rosters, but I came across several stories that talked about him. And I mean, you don't know, or maybe you do, but how random and lucky that is. I mean, when you're looking up genealogy stuff, sure, you'll find their names if they bought or sold land. You'll find them on casualty lists. You'll find them on immigration records. If they served, you'll see them on a roster. But you almost never think that you're going to come across an actual story. I have a hard enough time doing that with my father's service, let alone a man that served nearly 100 years ago. Well, enter Ohio and the Rainbow. I come to find out that William was second in command of L Company, and I knew ultimately he became company commander, and I didn't know how. The company commander, when they went in, was named Captain Otto Kindler. What a great name, right? Otto. Well, I had often wondered what happened to Kindler. Well, this book pretty much told me that in early May of 1918, the battalion commander, Major Henderson, he led L Company and another company, I don't recall which, on a deep raid behind enemy lines. They actually made their way 3 trench lines deep. All the while engaging Germans. They took almost 24 casualties. I don't remember the exact number. I think 2 men were killed. And it was during that operation that both William and Otto were injured. But both survived. Both were listed under slight injuries, and so they continued to serve. Well, that didn't answer many of my questions except how did his name end up on a casualty list. But I was relieved to see that both he and his company commander walked away from that.
Wilson, we're in no man's land. We need to go now.
I can't get up.
Shit.
Hey!
I'm sorry.
But you promised to get me back in one piece.
Just keep it down.
What about medals? What about being heroes?
I'm no hero.
But you gave me your word. Your bleeding word. So either you're a decent bloke who's gonna help me, or you're a lying, no good bastard who'll look me in the eye and finish it. Ah! Put your cards on the table, Blackburn. You're not George Rackham, are you? Son of the 4th bloody Earl of Windsor. How naive do you think I am?
Let's get out of here.
Now those raids occurred in early May, but the first major engagement that the 166 saw was the famed Champagne-Marne defensive, what many consider to be the Gettysburg of 1918, because it indicated the high water mark for the Germans, who attacked all along the front. Fortunately, thanks to aerial reconnaissance and a leak out of Berlin, the Allies were made aware of this impending attack and adjusted accordingly. We devised a defense-in-depth tactic, whereas our front line only contained a scattering of companies, and the real bulk of our forces would be in the second line. The Germans, well, you know, if you know anything about World War I artillery, they aim towards their target, and then they recalibrate, and with the second volley maybe they'll be closer to their target, recalibrate, and maybe the third time they'll actually hit their target. Well, to adjust for this, they had previously trained in on our forward trench. The idea being, when the German onslaught came, our front line would retrograde to the second line of trenches, and the Germans would occupy our front trench. Then our artillery would open up and score a direct hit on the very first volley, inflicting mass casualties. So the night came. The Germans opened up with high explosive and mustard gas, and in fact it was mustard gas that incapacitated L Company Commander Captain Otto Kindler. Lieutenant Bellhorn took the reins and commanded the company as they repulsed the German attack. That's right, they did not retrograde. Instead, they fought the Germans tooth and nail, and the front line of trenches held. Granted, as you might imagine, we took friendly fire casualties from the artillery, who opened up on that front trench, and then recalibrated in order to hit out into no man's land at the advancing Germans. The Germans employed some dastardly tactics, dressing as Red Cross, carrying a machine gun on a stretcher under a blanket. They dressed as French soldiers, but our troops saw through all of it, knowing that none of that was coming out of no man's land. And we won the day. We turned back the Kaiserschlatt in that sector. Now, I appreciate you indulging me with this family story, and certainly L Company ran into many more engagements and even took part in the 100 Days Offensive. But that story's for another day. I'm Automatic. Thanks for watching. And if you like this video, like this video. I'll talk to you soon, friends.
Wilson said I was a no-good, lying son of a bitch. I brought him home because I think he's probably right. And I hate that fact more than I can tell you.
No, he's nothing of the sort. He's a cheat, a thief, and a liar. And he'll answer for his crimes. That's right, Blackburn.
Oh, and we recently had a son. Guess what we named him? That's right, William. The name goes on.